Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us. My name is Camila Brango, and I am the Director of Community at the Center for Communication. We're a nonprofit organization that connects students with the best media professionals. As a reminder, this program will be recorded, and for those who can tune in live, you can also watch any of our past panels from our recent seasons on our YouTube channel. If you're interested in participating in more of our events, make sure to follow us on Instagram and all social media platforms at Center for Communication and subscribe to our newsletter to keep up to date on events and internship and job opportunities from our partnering media companies. Our fall season is just around the corner, so please remember all of our in-person events are in New York. And starting tomorrow, we have our first on location at Spotco. We have some spots left, so if you're interested and you're in New York and would like to join us tomorrow, make sure to check out our website and grab your spot before it's gone. Next, you're also all invited to register for our first panel of the fall season, The Future of Storytelling Virtual Production on Monday, October 7 at SBA Theater. And which reminds me that October is filled with amazing panels geared towards all the media students and all the different things that you can do. So as a sneak peek, if you all like Law and Order, make sure to also register for our Making TV and NYC Law and Order Special Victims Unit panel. It's going to take place on Monday, October 28th at NYU Production Lab, and it will feature the showrunners of the show. So you get to ask them questions and learn everything that happens behind the scenes and how you can work there too. Now, I've shared a lot about all of our exciting events, but I'm really excited to start today's session. So please remember that to best enjoy today, make sure to rename your Zoom name to your preferred name, pronouns, and school. You can also mirror the format that you see on my screen, and which will allow me to call your name during the Q&A session. When it's your turn to ask a question, please use the hand raise button that is located at the bottom of your screen. When you click react, I will call in your name and ask you to unmute yourself. And we encourage you to ask questions and participate, but be mindful of all the other amazing students of this meeting that would also like to ask questions. So please keep your questions short and one question per person to allow Forrest to get to everybody or as much as he can. Now, let's get started with our office hours. I'm excited and honored to introduce Forrest Evashevski, Director of Experience Design at the Wall Street Journal and esteemed CenCom board member. Forrest brings nearly 20 years of industry-leading experience in multi-platform storytelling, visual systems, and content creation. Currently, he collaborates with cross-functional teams to deliver best-in-class UX across all digital platforms, while aligning business objectives with the user needs. Forrest is a key voice in shaping UX strategy, leading a diverse team of designers and mentoring them in their professional growth. Now, welcome, Forrest. Thank you so much for being here. I've just read a little bit about your bio, but we would love to hear in your own words, what do you do and how did you get started on this field?
Yeah, thank you for that. And hello, everybody. I think my story about how I came to UX design is optimistic in the sense that a lot of people can enter this field. But I started my career in New York in 2004, actually doing editorial design and worked very closely with editors in newsrooms around the city to produce that kind of content. Um, but really, I think if somebody wants to have an in-depth and thorough understanding of design, you have to understand the format in which you're creating. And so back in the day, it was either a large scale newspaper or it was a smaller magazine or a postcard. Today it's screens, and they can come in an equally wide range of sizes. And I became really interested in how content was flowing between those different experiences. And I've always had an interest in UI and UX design. I don't think it's that much of a leap. I think everybody doing editorial design today is an experienced designer. You're just dealing with a different type of format, and I was really excited to dive into that. I happened to work at the Wall Street Journal at the time, so there was an internal shift in my focus, and that's how I got to the job I'm at.
Amazing, Forrest. So I would love to backtrack a little bit more and just think about when you were in college and what kind of inspired you to study design. How was, what was the beginnings of your career? You moved to New York, all of that experience that maybe you can share some background information with our students.
Yeah, so fun fact, I was actually a business major at the University of Iowa, and and I was struggling a little bit with my with my course load as it pertained to calculus and statistics. Um, but uh, but I persevered. I think I was always interested in the design aspects of business. I was focused on marketing in particular, which, I think with some years of experience, I know that oftentimes that career field can come without design. But I think it was always kind of in the back of my mind. Um, I came from a very small town, and I don't know that I really got all the exposure that I think I needed in order to put together the idea at that point in my life that design could be not just like a painter or a sculptor or something, kind of, uh, I think traditional in that sense, but you can make a career out of it. And my brother was at there were two important people in my life at that time. My brother was going to design school at the University of Michigan, and he helped open my eyes up to the practical and business applications that design offers in corporate America. And that I think for me opened up a path to explore and see myself uh, as as somebody who could make it in the design field. And then I had a professor at the University of Iowa who really mentored me and had contacts in New York and got me out here. And I think, you can do design anywhere, but I wanted to be in New York, and this was a real hub for the kind of design that I was interested in, like-minded individuals like me. So that's how that all happened.
Amazing, Forrest. Thank you. I happen to know that you also work with our executive director, Max Robbins. I love if you can share a little bit about that experience and maybe, I remember when Max shares the stories is that you started around the same age as our students are currently studying and working in the design field. So do you mind sharing a little bit more about that experience? How was that like right after college? And then, having an opportunity that was so big and how did you rise up to the job?
Yeah, I mean, it helped. Look, I think everybody should be seeking out good people to surround themselves with, and I sought that out. I sought out people who would trust me, who would listen to me, even at that young age, and use me to help create something. I wanted to be a part of something. And that's really scary because I think at that age I had a vision of what I wanted to do, but I don't know that I really had the skills to execute on a lot of that. And so having those kind of people in in your life who are willing to help you feel useful, help you feel like you're part of the team, was a really important aspect. And I identified Max as one of those folks from the beginning. Remember the first time I met him, and we did some great work together. I think what I'm describing is a really scary thing because I'm interacting with folks who are on top of their game. I'm 22 years old, I think as how old I was at the time. And I knew what I didn't know. But I kept taking those meetings and I kept putting myself in uncomfortable positions. And again, like my relationship with Max and another New York City creative director at the time who took me under his wing. His name was JC Suarez, one of the greats. Those two were working together, and they gave me that safe space, I think, to grow. And I think that that's the that's the best way of how I could describe those years with Max.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. So inspiring.
Yeah.
Now, everybody, is your chance for you to start pressing that raise hand option at the bottom of your screen. I'm gonna ask Forrest this one last question, so please remember to start, putting your hand up so you can ask your question. I'll call on your name. I ask you to unmute yourself. So get ready for that right now if you like. Now, so Forrest, you mentioned something in regards to as a student, right? And how you studied business, but you had hopes or you had, things that you wanted to do related to marketing and you didn't know design was an option. Now, there's similar students in that, but what do you think while they're still in college, should they start doing or working on to get to that linear path or to find that job opportunity in design, UI, UX?
Yeah. So if you know what you want to do, you're lucky, first of all. And I've seen folks really excel once they had that laser focus. So if you're there and you know what you want to do, you're already 50%. The other 50% is getting to an environment where there are other people who you can learn from in that field. For me, it was New York. And it doesn't have to be New York. I mean, you can be a UX designer anywhere. But I think that the most important thing somebody can do who's in college right now is find a community of folks that you can learn from and get involved. That if that means showing up to the office, show up to the office. If that means okay, so say you're a bizarro version of me and you went to the West Coast, not the East Coast, right? Like if that means going to LA, get there, right? You know, if you are interested in advertising experiences, digital advertising experiences, and not editorial design, where I went to, find yourself an ad agency. Um, get into the communities that will help you realize your dreams. I think is the simplest way I can answer that.
Thank you so much, Forrest, for that. So let's get started with the students. I see Sasha del Rosario, and I apologize if I'm butchering your name. I'm going to ask you to please unmute yourself and introduce yourself a little bit and go ahead with your question.
Yes, hi, thank
Hi.
you, and nice to meet you, Forrest. I'm studying creative producing for immersive cinema with Columbia's Digital Storytelling Lab, which is overseen by Lance Weiler. And I'm currently, as of this week, studying something called MDA, which is, I believe, a video game design framework. I'm trying to remember what it stands for, but it's sorry, it's mechanics, dynamics, and aesthetics. And I wanted to know, I mean, we're learning it in, I know it's based in video game design, but we're learning it in the context of experience design. I wanted to ask if that is a framework that you're familiar with and use or have used in your work, or what models or frameworks around experience design do you use that might be worth someone who's aspiring to do that kind of work to become familiar with?
Yeah, yeah, great question. So I'm not so familiar with video game design. But I think that's a product of the company I work for, right? Like the Wall Street Journal is disseminating, news, written word, audio, and video. And so when those mediums come together, the tools that I use are like 95% Figma. And then I'm working on some projects right now with After Effects, and so just to communicate motion, but that I think is a reflection of the organization I'm at. Now, video game design is a really, really exciting field, and I would imagine that there are applications in careers that are just to the side of mine that would use that extensively. I'm thinking right now of a video game developer, or actually, this was a developer that, and I'll try to find the app for you, but they did a weather app and they did a calculator app, but they used a gaming engine to communicate the visuals of it, and it was one of the craziest calculators I've ever used. So I would say that while I haven't used that stuff personally, there are a lot of applications and use cases for that kind of experience, and so it feels like a really good thing for you to be involved in.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Let's go with our next question. Taryn, if you can please unmute yourself and go ahead with your next question.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. My name's Teron, and I actually go to Mass Art, which is Massachusetts College of Art and Design. And my major, I'm a senior this year. My major is communication design. I still call it graphic design, but I think communication design makes it seem a little bit more fancier. Um, and right now we're working on UI UX. And I got my wireframes here.
Nice, nice.
And my question to you was, when you're working with clients, how many wireframes do you like draft when you're, let's say, like in the zone or when you're working with people? How, what's the process for you? What's that like? Was my question. Just because I'm fairly new to it. We use Figma too,
Yeah.
but there's also some other programs out there that we're kind of like playing around with as well. And this past semester, I did like a museum exhibit using that program. So it was like an app that I created to kind of like help you navigate an easier way through like the exhibits. But yeah, that was kind of like my question of like when you're drafting and you're going through that phase, like what's that process like for you?
Yeah. So, I think what I've noticed, and I don't deal so much with clients. Sometimes I do. Sometimes people will reach out to Dow Jones from the outside and we'll create experiences for them. But what I have are stakeholders. And stakeholders are like maybe the chief marketing officer wants to see something, and she's a stakeholder in a project, or the editor in chief wants to see something. The editor in chief is definitely a stakeholder. What I've found, Taryn, is that wireframes are what they want to see first. And so, and I think that's really interesting. Coming from my background and coming as an experienced designer, I'm like, don't you want to see a finished product? No, not really. A lot of times folks are interested in seeing something sketched out, and they really want to see user flows. User flows are really important so you can walk people through what you're planning. I think to answer your question in terms of how many, it depends. It depends on the project and the client and what the complexity is that you're trying to deliver. I've found that the team here, who are doing wireframes will typically do like three is I think a number that sits out of my head. We're working on changing up our voice experience at the Wall Street Journal, and the last project we did, I was presented with three wireframes, and
Okay.
and it was and we ended up kind of like throwing one out and merging two, and ended up with something pretty good. So you don't want to kill yourself at that stage, you know.
See, they have us working hard because we be doing a lot.
I and what I've also kind of appreciated about some of this about the design thinking process that is prevalent in this field is oftentimes people will start, and I've done this, and I like this actually. You start with pencil and paper, and I actually had an aversion to that. Again, coming from my background, I started in print. I'm like, no, I'm all digital. Like, I don't want to do it. But it's so natural and it's so nice, and you can sketch like 15 things way quicker than you can even do it on an iPad.
Mhm.
Take a photo of it, upload it to Figma, start looking at that stuff, and that's your base. That can even be a wireframe, even something as loose as that sketch, right?
Okay.
So yeah, that's
Thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Thank you, Forrest. So, I didn't study design, but I love learning about that. That's great. Let's
Yeah.
go with Stephanie. Please go ahead and unmute yourself and come up and ask your question.
Me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. I and I don't really I'm not really in the UI UX. I'm more in marketing and I'm trying to get into like social media marketing. I've been like creating like videos. I've been doing like flyers for people, like kind of freelance. And like having a really difficult time trying to like break into like anywhere, like get a job.
Okay. Um, so you it's tough. It's tough. But I know you can do it. Tell me what are some of the ways and avenues that you've explored?
Um, so I've done internships. Currently, I'm currently with sorry, that's how I learned about this. What is it called? Shoot, Real Works. Yes, sorry.
Is that a staffing agency?
No, it's an internship program.
Oh, okay.
They're similar to us, Forrest, but they just go more into filming, TV production,
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. So, I haven't seen your work, but I know you're talented, and I know that you have a place. It is hard to break in somewhere, and that is going to be the hardest thing you ever do. I'm not lying. Like once you get past that hump and you get in somewhere, you're good. Like everything is easier after that. So what I might recommend is perseverance and sticking yourself out there. What are you looking for in particular? Like a full-time job or a full-time job? Okay. One avenue I might suggest, and are you still in school or?
No, I graduated.
Okay. When did you graduate?
Just last year.
Okay, great. One avenue that I might recommend is staffing agencies. So large organizations become a black box, right? Like it's hard to kind of get in at a place. Even myself, as the director of experience design, I hire people. You know, there's just there's a lot of there's sometimes these companies can become black boxes. But with staffing agencies, those are ways to get in the door and develop relationships with folks on the inside. It's a little bit like a Trojan horse, right? I'm working with a staffing agency right now that really helped, and those girls, I would hire them in a heartbeat because they helped me out so much. They were hard workers, and I got to know them. And I I never would have met them or interacted or worked with them if it wasn't for that staffing agency. So if you're in a freelance position and you're looking for work that you'd like to get full time at, or at least network, I'd start there.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and good luck. Like I described earlier, it's scary when you're young and you're just out of college, and all of a sudden there's this expectation that you have to be an adult now, and you don't. I still feel like a kid every once in a while, but you just got to get that full first job, and I think if you take those any step really, but I'd start with a staffing agency. And I think even though I knew Max through that creative director that I talked about, I think I was technically hired through a staffing agency because they didn't have the budget for me at the time. So there's need out there, and sometimes the need is fulfilled with staffing agencies.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Forrest and Stephanie. And I don't know if you don't mind me asking, are you located in New York?
Yes, I'm in Queens.
Okay, so the next step, apart from, all the great advice that Forrest shared, is attending our events. This is the best way that, I myself was a student of CenCom a couple of years, many years ago now, but, now I work with CenCom and we help a lot of different students. If you check our job board, there's always opportunities, internships, and things that we post on our social media all the time that you can, apply to. Sometimes some companies ask us, that they prioritize our students over of the other individuals that apply. So just really, now that you got to know Forrest and our organization, stay connected and attend our panels, and you will start to see all the great things that are going to come.
I will. Thank you.
Right, perfect. Let's go with our next student, ask a question. Fiona Fulton, if you don't mind to please unmute yourself and come up and ask a question.
Hello, thank you, Forrest, for coming to speak with us. I am a senior at NYU right now. My major is global media and communications, which is like super broad, but I'm particularly interested in advertising and like the creative side of advertising. However, just like almost every other college student out there, and honestly anyone, a recent grad, the job market is a little tough right now. I mean, kind of always has been, but like with AI picking people who to interview and stuff like that, it's like really hard to stand out. So, if you have any advice for like the best way to kind of separate yourselves from others, or like what buzzwords you recommend, especially for the bigger name companies like Wall Street Journal, and ABC News, and yeah.
Well, yeah, I think you're right. It always is tight, right? Like there's never a moment where everybody who gets their dream job, right? And I came to New York in the shadow of 9/11 and a recession, and that was also kind of a tough time. Um, I think I think in terms of AI, It is scary, you know, and but it is here. And so I I guess my practical advice on that level is to play the game. Because AI is looking for very specific things. And you can suss out from a job interview or a job posting rather, uh, what 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 you need to say, right? And whether it's the right cover letter or, you know, optimizing your resume. Obviously, you want to be as truthful as possible, but one word over another might be an industry standard, for example. Um, I would go there. You know, and it's gonna make us better as a society, you know, when things get more, you know, we're all going to raise our game a little bit. But I would definitely optimize for that. I wouldn't fear it, you know. I mean, I haven't thought too much about this, but you know, from the perspective of a large company, and let's say there's one position and there's 10 applicants, right? Or actually, let's just say 1,000 applicants. You know, the HR person isn't going to be able to go through all of those efficiently, right? So AI is actually helping you as much, I think, if you kind of understand how it's working for the company, there are ways to get yourself in the door because of it, right? It's not just a closing door, it's also an opportunity for you. And I guess that would be how I would approach it. Um, and uh, and yeah, I mean, I think also, you know, human beings, unless things go wrong, are never going to be irrelevant. So I would use the time to get to know people and network and get out there, and you're doing that in this call right now. So I think those things plus a little patience. You know, I was impatient at your age. Like I was like, I want these things now. Um, and it takes some time. It takes some time and it takes a little bit of discouragement. And I also think discouragement is a really scary thing at your age, because I don't look at 42. I've experienced enough of it to just kind of like, yeah, okay, well, I'll try again tomorrow. But when I was your age, it was existential sometimes. I was like, no, you know, I didn't get that job, or I didn't do that right. And it's okay. Sun rises the next day, keep at it. And I think that's my best advice. And also, you know, job market doesn't say poor forever, right? Like I said, there's never an opportunity for everybody to have their dream job all the time, but there's also better markets, and that stuff comes and goes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You. And Forrest, before we continue, I just have a quick follow-up from Fiona's question. Are there specific keywords or platforms or things that we should be adding, the students should be added on their resume to get hired or to go through that AI process, keywords that they can include in their resumes related to UI, UX design?
Mhm. I mean, I think the phrase that I've seen a lot, I've seen this, I've seen these words like with people coming from Apple. I was writing a synopsis for some of the things that I did and ran it through some AI software, and the term visual strategy came up again. And you know, there's no science. I mean, there's no hard fast rule, but you can start to identify industry words, right? and phrases. And so for me, just the idea of the term visual strategist started to really pop out. And I was like, well, that's exactly what I do. And I see other companies using this. And, like ChatGPT suggested it. And so you can kind of start to weave together a story, and had confidence in how you move forward. It's a little bit of a process, but again, my perspective on AI is that it works for us. I would never take ChatGPT on the face of it ever. Like, but I bounce ideas off it. I see how it can make me better. I ask it questions and then I filter it through my own voice. It's just another
Cool.
tool. Yeah. And so you should use it. You should not be afraid of it.
Yes, very good. Thank you so much, Forrest, for that. Let's continue with some questions, and I apologize in advance if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. Vanshika, if you don't mind unmuting yourself and coming up and ask your question.
Yes, Vanshika is perfect. Hi, Forrest. Hi, Camilla. Thank you so much for organizing this. I'm Vanshika. I'm a senior at Pratt Institute. I'm majoring in communications design with a minor in entrepreneurship and UI UX. I think over the past few years, I've gained a lot of interest in like different things such as branding, advertising, marketing, and UI UX. All of them are kind of interrelated, but I feel like when I apply for job applications, there are different positions for branding or for UI UX or for marketing or advertising. And I was wondering, like, I am interested in all of these, but I was wondering, as someone who just is at an entry level position, do teams prefer people with more diverse skills, or do you think I should really be focusing? I still have one more year to graduate. So should I be focusing on like one key skill that I want to kind of really hone in on, and or should I kind of still keep exploring all these different interests of mine?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great question. So again, it kind of goes back to my friends who were laser focused and like got to New York and got into like, be the creative director of InStyle back in the day because that's what they wanted, right? Like
Yeah,
that person never deviated from
yeah.
his desire. I was a little different. Still am different, right? Like I started in editorial design. I very well could have gone into advertising design,
Yeah.
ended up in UX. So I've got a wide um, range of interests, and I don't think I would change that about myself.
Mhm.
Um, I like having a diverse span of ways that I can apply design. You know, uh, and so that's how I've lived my life. I don't think either path is wrong. It depends on who you are. And if you want to focus on one thing, then I would suggest figuring out what that is now. And yes, use the next year to focus on that and then only apply to that job.
Mhm.
Um, or you can keep it broad and you can start to apply to a lot of different things. I think there's I would present a portfolio that's appropriate based on branding versus UI UX. They are different disciplines of design. Um, but I will also just stress, and this was some advice I got from somebody who was in probably their 60s or 70s, and I was still in college, and I got invited to this party, and it was a bunch of successful people, and I was like, what am I doing here? And like, and the guy told me, he was like, you're graduating soon, and he said, your first job is the most important because it determines everything else. And for me, he was right. Like, I ended up in publishing, in editorial design, and I'm still there because that's where my center started, right? And that's where my network grew from. Now, I'm kind of to the side now. I'm still at the Wall Street Journal, but I'm in UX design. I chose the Wall Street Journal to work at 15 years ago because I knew I could do a bunch of things here. Like, you
Yeah.
let me in the door and I can move around a lot in this organization, and I have. But I do want to say that for me, the putting the stake in the ground in a certain kind of design did have a cascading impact going on late into later years. So and that's not to say, I'm one person. Like, I've seen people like get up one day and like, I'm done with this, and like, like go into something completely different. Like, you can totally do that. But I do think that your first job makes a big difference. So does that answer your question?
Yes, I think that really helps. Like maybe choosing one thing you're really passionate about and moving ahead, but also keeping the other interests alongside so they kind of inform that one thing you're passionate about, because ultimately everything kind of informs
Yeah.
the other.
I have my own rule. It's
Mhm.
called the 80-20 rule. I told my cousin this I don't know, a couple months ago, actually. He went to the University of Michigan for writing and really wants to thought he came to New York. He's like doing sketch comedy. It's really good. And he's a great writer. Uh, his mom was in TV and movies, so kind of like that kind of writing. But he was kind of figuring it out too, and he just needed a job, and ended up working for this fashion brand, and he was doing like graphic design for t-shirts and stuff like that.
Wow.
Um, and ended up really liking it and wanted to talk to me about design. And he was like, I don't know what I want to do. Like, I'm either gonna be a writer or I'm gonna be a designer. And I said, you don't have to give up both.
Mhm.
But my recommendation, or one or the other, for one or the other, but you can do both. But my recommendation is the one that you choose, give it 80% of your time. And then the 20% is what you do in the evenings or the weekends. I came up with that because I like to illustrate. I'm never gonna be, well, never say never, but like, I probably won't quit my job tomorrow and be an illustrator
Yeah.
because I've made a choice. I'm in UX design, and that's my career. But I love illustrating. I sell it with my brother. It's a good chance to design with my brother, who's also a designer. And so how I've divided my time is 80% goes into my full-time career. And then from 10 p.m. to midnight every night, I sit down and I draw.
Wow.
And that for me is the right breakdown, you know. So you don't have to give, like, let's say you go into branding and you're like, okay, this is great, but like I kind of miss, you know, this, whatever this is. You can do it. I would just be careful about how you, because the second you've got like a 50-50 situation, for me, I couldn't handle that. Maybe
Yeah.
somebody else could, but that's yeah.
Yes.
That
Thank you.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yes, thank you so much. We just have less than 10 minutes left, and I want to make sure we get through all the other 4 questions that we have. So let's continue with Alba. If you can please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, thank you so much, Camila and Forrest. It has been very insightful for me so far. My name is Alva. I'm from Michigan State University, junior. Right now, the
Pardon.
major, yeah, go green, go white. Double major in information science and advertising creative. I also noticed that in your background, you have an art direction concentration. It's also my concentration right now in college. You also touched on this a little bit, but I just wonder, how do you make that transition from art direction into user experience design, was there something like a key element that helps you make it like a seamless transition that you would highlight during that process?
I mean, uh, the transition that I made was gradual, and then, all at once. It was like I was kind of involved in the newsrooms, UI UX process while I was doing content design, and then the senior vice president was hiring this new spot, and I was able to transition. It was all kind of under one roof or whatever. But design thinking and the process around UI UX, the design flow of it, from sketching something out to wireframes to user flows to research to high fidelity mocks and experience design. That is one of the most accessible and easily obtained processes ever. Like it's designed to be open. So I think if you were an art director, like say you're an art director at a photo studio or something like that, and you wanted to get into UI UX, I would just simply certify myself. I would take classes at Google. I would emphasize some of the things that I'd done in college with it, and I would continue to apply that skill in the real world. Like, I don't know, maybe there's a friend who needs a website, or somebody, or maybe you could just do a prototype of an app. I think I think when you show that you have an understanding of that base, process, that goes a long way.
I can see
Amazing.
that. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you so much. Let's go with our next question, Sarah. If you can please unmute yourself and come on up and ask a question.
Hi, Forrest. Hi, Camilla. It's a pleasure to meet you. My name's Sarah. I am a master's student at New York University. I'm studying media, culture, and communication. My question has more to do with the marketing side of things as well. So I know that you've worked as a design leader for a bunch of different subjects, whether it be fashion, travel, food, etc. And so I'm wondering if you could speak to your experience kind of from the creative ideation stage to the final production stage, and how you work with different teams, whether or not coverage of different topics necessitates a different kind of design, and how you sort of work together to combine that creative piece with like the KPIs to come up with a product that works for your client.
Yeah. You have a pretty good understanding of how things work. That
Thank you.
I mean, some of the terms, yeah, spot on.
Thank you.
So my role here is about taking a number of different business needs, user needs, and any other need that may come up, and putting them together into a product, right?
Mhm.
Um, there there is always going to be nuance based on what that product is in terms of how you go about it. But just to really quickly answer your question, it usually arises from a business need. And that business need is usually synonymous with a user need. Okay, let's say I redesigned a module on our website, and we're noticing that the click-through rate is down 30%. Well, that's a user problem because there's something about it they don't like, and that's a business
Right.
problem because those folks are the ones that are like not going to subscribe next year. So we get what we call PRD. A PRD is basically a proposal. It's called a product requirements document, and that's somebody in the business saying like, here's the challenge, and here are all the the uh, the challenges we'd like to solve for. From there, we go into ideation, wireframes, user flows. We take a look at why this might be happening. We look at research. If it's a current project, we might want to test the current state and understand what the pain points are. We'll want to go from wireframes to high fidelity designs and prototypes, which we'll then want to put in front of users again to see if we've solved for the problem of why click-through rate was so down. And then all throughout that process, we have what's called stand-ups. And stand-ups are a place for everybody to come together. In this organization, it's primarily the marketing department. The department I'm in called technology, which is product and design, and then the newsroom. And so the three of us come together, and the newsroom is like, is this communicating, what we need to communicate? And I'm saying, is this the best experience for our users? And marketing is saying, we know this, we know why this person subscribed, and this is the demographic that's not clicking. Are you hitting their wants? Are you providing for their needs? And so the three of us come together and we have that conversation, and we have that over and over and over again until we get it right.
Right. Thank you. That's great insight.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. And we have our last question. Anupama, if you don't mind also turning on your video if it's possible, and you can come up and ask your question.
Yeah. Hi. Thank you for taking out the time to talk to us. So I'm a student at Parsons School of Design, and I'm studying design strategy. And what they tell us is that it is solving complex problems, which is interesting because it can take you anywhere, right? In any industry. And I personally come from a design background. So because I saw that you also do strategy, I really want to know what is something that you kind of tackle in your day-to-day work that portrays what strategy is, or how do you tackle these kind of complex challenges at work?
Mm-hmm. So, I think it helps to tell a story. And I like telling stories. The visual strategy that is on my mind right now. There are several visual strategies. The visual strategy for our newsletter was actually really interesting. If we have time, we'll get to that. We might not, but there's a lot of inconsistencies at the Wall Street Journal. I won't get into details, but there's like, if you really look closely, and there are things that I'm working to change, it's sometimes hard and takes a while to get change in a big organization. But the visual strategy that I deployed to create a global system that would inform consistency was called Voices. And so I just sat back and I told a story about like all of the different voices that I hear as I read an article. I'm hearing a human voice because there are human beings that are writing this headline and writing this article. There is a platform voice because the Wall Street Journal as a company wants me to sign up for this newsletter. And the Wall Street Journal as a company wants me to see this advertisement. And there is a data voice. There is a voice of the markets at the Wall Street Journal, and that voice is distinctly different from the platform voice and from the human voice. And there's an emerging voice called the AI voice, and that is different because it's talking like a human, but it's not. And so the visual strategy was creating a story around all of those different voices that are put together in one article template, and then imagining how each one of them should be designed as a way to realize what they're trying to say. So the data voice might come through, I'm just making this up, but the data voice might come through in a sans serif because you know what? It's machine, it's dumb, it's just reporting the news, Apple's at 400, that's it. There's nothing there, right? It's just data. So it's like straight. But like the editorial voice or the human voice is way more nuanced and way like more delicate. And so maybe we want to realize that as a sans serif. And then I'm reading down the article and everything's sans serif, everything's in human voice. But then all of a sudden you get to, oh, the platform wants me to sign up for this newsletter, but it's designed in a sans serif or in a serif the same as the headline. That doesn't make any sense because they're coming from different perspectives and they're saying different things. So I can see that inconsistency now because I've applied a strategy and a paradigm and a context around all of these things. And then I can say, I'm going to make that different. And then you kind of go into how should it be different? What are the choices communicating to the user? So that I think is the best way that I could describe strategy. Gets conceptual, but there are real practical steps and guidelines that come from it that I think are absolutely essential.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Forrest. You reminded me a lot when I did advertising. And as a marketer, I had to pitch it to our designers as a story. So I love that. Forrest, I know this is your time and everybody else's, but I just want to be mindful of everybody's time. So do you have time for one more question or?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
Awesome.
Let me just double check. Let's see.
Great. If it all should be good.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
Great. So then let's have Tia, if you can please unmute yourself and go ahead with your question.
Hi, yeah, I'm Tia. I'm sorry, I was walking my dog, so I got out of line because
Oh,
I switched devices.
yeah.
I am actually, thank you both for doing this event. I'm actually not a student yet. I am a television video editor and working at the Wall Street Journal. I'm sure you're aware of the massive layoffs yesterday, the second round at Paramount, and pretty much across the board, the industry is. So I am trying to pivot. And I was hoping you could give me some advice about how I could augment my video editing resume. I mean, I've been editing unscripted television for 20 years, and it's a very specific niche, a very specific type of work. And but I do think that the most similar kind of job would be working on finite projects with obscure software, and I think the lifestyle would be very similar. So I really would like to pivot to some kind of you know social media, kind of or digital marketing work. And I guess my question is, if you were looking at a resume from a video editor, what kind of thing would augment that kind of resume? For example, is it worth it for me to do a boot camp? I know that you had mentioned the Google, UI, UX courses. I've definitely considered that. I would kind of like to stay more in the visual. I'm sorry, this question is so long in the visual side of it. But anyway, yeah. Well, so that's my question. How would I augment? Is it worth it to do a boot camp?
You know, I'm not so familiar with the workflows of a video editor. I know that they are needed. Um, I might start and important. You know, I might, and if you want to stay on the content side, I would think about creative and new ways that you can introduce video into the kind of experiences that you are looking to move into. I art directed this like it was like a shirt company out of Hong Kong, and we did this is like years ago. But the photographer did some video of like light moving across the fabric, and it was so beautiful that we just made that the background of the homepage. And it was like a um and it was really nice, and I think struggling a little bit because I don't have so much of a video background, but just going back to that experience and understanding how essential the role is of what you do in terms of experience design in general, and if you want to go into like social media stuff or whatever. But I would just start to put together some clips, maybe frame it, you know, like on your website, you know, have like a frame that's there's a number of ways you could do that, but just like an iPhone shaped frame with like some really cool video animations of you know uh of a story or a social media post that you put up, and I would just start applying your craft in different ways. And I think, you know, after a number of years at Paramount, you probably have all of the proficiency to do that. You just need to kind of reframe it.
Yeah. Yeah. So create a website, in other words, because you know, yeah. Okay. My second question, last question is,
I apologize. Yeah, we're not able to do more just because, you know, we have run out of time. But I'm sure you can get connected with Forrest on LinkedIn. You know, he is part of the CenCom family. So happy to, you know, make that connection as well afterwards. Thank you so
awesome.
much,
Thank you.
Forrest.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. And, you know, truly, Forrest, this was such an amazing advice that you gave everybody. I am inspired, and I hope everybody took notes and had the opportunity to just, you know, take advantage of the fact that you here to answer great questions and provided the best advice.
Great. This was awesome. Thank you, everybody, for all your fantastic questions.
Of course. So thank you. We hope to see you again soon. Don't forget to follow us on social media, subscribe to our newsletter to stay up to date on events and job opportunities. And that's it. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you.